almost back, T minus a couple hours, really. I'm really excited. I think this is something we've been looking forward to all off season. We've been trying to put together some fun streams for everybody, of course. But now we get real live entertainment. So I'm super excited to see how things turn out this season and our first preseason game, obviously tomorrow. And yeah, now we got pretty much Lakers news dropping every single week, every day in the media. So I'm really excited to see how everything looks, how everything gets put together this season. But yeah, I'm really excited for all things Lakers basketball coming up for sure.
Sorry, y'all. Making sure y'all hear me, or I feel like there's always some technical stuff going on. I'm so sorry. I'm like probably the youngest one in the group, but I feel like I have the technical difficulties of an old person sometimes. Um, but I mean, we're back. I'm finally back. It's been a while since I've been on the show. Really happy to be here. There's a lot going on in the Lakers world. Actually, a little bit of roster change. Well, we talked about it a little bit with Christian Coloco being the most recent addition. But besides that, there's a lot to talk about. Obviously, media day happened, training camp is happening. We got our first game coming up in the preseason. Unfortunately, I will not be there, but I will be watching still. And I'm just excited to talk about all of it.
Yeah, I'm super excited as well. Like Alex said, we had Koloko obviously got signed. Training camp, I'm sure we'll talk about today. A lot of fun stories coming out of that. And yeah, we're back. Lakers basketball is back. Post game emotional shows are coming back too, so that should be fun. I'm excited. I think, like I said a minute ago, pretty much off season's over. We have real content every single week coming now, as far as just up to date Lakers news, and it's gonna be a really fun journey this year. So I'm excited.
Do we want to do any watch parties this year, especially on playback? I know on our old app we were doing it, but like definitely on here, I think a lot of watch parties will be fun. If we end up doing one during the preseason, we'll let you know. But unless anything else is said, we will be starting our watch parties during the regular season, and we'll still be tweeting. We'll still be talking about the preseason games as well. But that's when the real nitty gritty is going to be.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm down for the watch parties. I know here it's a little bit like just click a button and we're all watching together, so that should be fun. Also, post game shows will be back live strong every. Well, I'm gonna try. Last year I did try to do almost every game unless I was sick, but we pretty much we got a good amount of games in last year. So the vibe right now is every game starting tomorrow. Hopefully, we should be good. Well, yeah, I'll be live tomorrow on playback here for everybody watching. But yeah, we'll definitely have some fun watch parties as well. It should be a good time. I'm excited.
I guess Earl, if you're hopping on tomorrow, I guess I'll do my best to join as well. Alan is still here. He's just tweeting a little bit on our account, on our X account. It's weird saying X still, but he's on our X account real quick. If y'all are not following yet, I'll drop the link later. It is Quest 18 Pod. He's just getting some updates on there. But yeah, make sure you're following the rest of our accounts before we get into our real agenda, because we have this playback. There's probably a few people on YouTube as well. I don't know if they are. And there's also people I think on X, right? Not on our X, but I know Six Man Jake, who's unfortunately not here, is streaming it for us on his X account. So there's a lot of ways to watch. Um, I will always tell people to go on our playback no matter what. But yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Make sure y'all follow up. We do have a lot of fun content coming. I know it's been the off season. We've been trying to come up with ideas, but of course, in season content is a lot easier, a lot more fun things to do. Reactions to we got post games. Hopefully, they're a lot more. I don't know what we less Darvin Hammy this year. So yeah, I'm excited. Let's hop into the content today.
Yeah, like I said, if you have any questions, hot takes, or anything regarding Lakers Media Day or anything Lakers in general, heading to tomorrow's preseason game versus the Minnesota Timberwolves, drop them below in chat. Drop them below if you're on X. And yeah, let's start with this Lakers Media Day and talk about was at least everyone's takeaways from Lakers Media Day. There's so much reports, news, and everything going on. At least whoever wants to start before you drop your takeaway.
I think well, there's a lot we can talk about in media day. I think we're gonna be talking about this for a very long time because a lot of things happen. I think I'll just start off with, like, the general feel, and then we can go more detailed from there. I think the general feel is actually really good, and the general feel of the media day actually had me a lot more confident in our team than what I was feeling in the past. Obviously, I had a little bit of faith, a little bit of it felt delusional though when I had my little bit of faith. Like things were not looking good. The roster wasn't moving. The front office wasn't doing what they're supposed to be doing. Other teams in the West were just in an already competitive Western Conference was just improving their game as well. And I knew that a lot of the hope I had back then was a little delusional. But going into the media day, listening to all the interviews, and just seeing even a little bit of training camp as well, I feel a lot more reassurance that we genuinely will have a good campaign for us. I think the one thing that stood out to me the most in terms of general feeling of this media day is that there's this sense of identity, there's this sense of, like, confidence, not just, like, fake confidence, the one where you have to, like, fake it till you make it, but, like, genuine confidence and understanding of what each, person is meant to do for the team. I listened on YouTube to pretty much all of the player conferences, and all of them just had really strong concrete answers on what they wanna do, what their role is, what their role can be in the future as well, and it feels a lot more reassuring knowing that everyone in the Lakers organization seems to have just a better, clearer vision of what the team is trying to do. I don't think we had that in multiple seasons or under the entire Darvin Ham tenure or anything like that, so even though JJ Redick is a rookie coach and we haven't seen him really play in a game setting yet, I think just, like, the general shift of confidence and just clear understanding is something that is really making me feel confident as a fan.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think we can go back to the point where you said everybody's kind of uniform right now. Last year, going into press conferences, media days, we talked about knowing your role. A lot of players on this team already know their role before the season starts. We had our stars announced 2 weeks out before our first preseason game, which was impressive compared to Darvin Ham. He's like, "Oh, I'm trying to figure things out. I don't know if this will work. This will work. Whatever. We'll put him in." All these different things, but it seems like JJ Redick and his staff, they took a look at all the tape from last year, looking at numbers, percentages, and stuff like that, and put together the group that performed the best. Like we talked about this starting lineup. At times, we were talking about how we could compete with this lineup. I mean, I know we all wanted a trade to happen this summer. It didn't. That's why I was saying I don't think it's the end of the world. Yes, I would have liked to move, but this starting lineup is not bad. Like it's the same starting lineup that was put in. Like for a streak of time, they were all scoring in double figures at one point in the season. Like it was a really impressive lineup. I think the problem with that is it wasn't optimized. Now we have a coaching staff who I know you guys seen some of the clips out of camp, like a lot of motion. Like you see the ball moving, you see guys playing good defense. I seen like LeBron James on that kick out to 80 in the paint. Like that was a nice play. You've seen a lot of off-ball movement just throughout that whole play. And it's got me impressed. I think I'm going into this season a lot more excited than what I was before. And the interviews, like you said, everybody seems happy. Like they seem like it's not just we're going through the motions. Like D'Lo was talking about it, like things feel a lot more organized this year. I think that's the word he used. And it just seems like everybody's kind of enjoying the JJ Redick coaching style so far. Obviously, we haven't played the game yet. We haven't even played preseason. We don't know what it's gonna look like, but at the same time, I can automatically tell like the vibes are just a whole lot better from everybody on this team. So also, apparently LeBron's like gave a suggestion of having a DJ at every practice, so that's kind of funny as well. JJ Redick was kind of joking about it. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if JJ was a huge fan of it, but he's like, yeah, it was like a Bron suggestion, so we went with it. So yeah, I'm happy what I've been seeing. Excited. I'm especially excited for Max Christie. He got the big shout out from Bron as well, saying he thinks he's gonna have a good year. And like Bron is a guy, not saying he doesn't give guys their flowers, but usually when he does or when he works out with you in the summer, stuff like that, you have a good year. Biggest, most recent example I give is Jalen Johnson on the Hawks. I think that's his last name. Jalen on the Hawks, power forward on the Hawks. He trained with LeBron last summer, and last year he had his best year. Like he played really good basketball next to Trey Young. Obviously, got injured a little bit, but still he played really good basketball. So when you get kind of like that Bron sign off, usually you're due for a good year. So he got that from Braun, JJ Redick, just guys throughout camp. So I'm excited that Max Christie seems like a legit lock to kind of be in the rotation. But yeah, that was just starting off the conversation of the presser for training camp. I'm excited.
Yeah, you guys very much talk about these their structure. I think that's one of the main points that this team overall talked about. How like there's more of a structure and there's more of at least a plan in place for this season, and that's something I'm excited to hear. Like I said, we'll have to wait until that structure is actually shown in the first preseason game. Like I said, we have to hold our judgment, but it's a good thing that the players are kind of advocating that there is like I said, a plan in place and at least a momentum towards, hey, we have at least as Earl said, like each player has a role and we're gonna do our best to what we're given with. And I think that that's a great thing to hear. And Alex talks about how Rui Hachimura crashed the glass, which was amazing. And off of that, from that video, is like D'Angelo Russell sort of he passed back to Anthony Davis, sort of like I would imagine it was a pick and pop because it was a shorter slash compressed video, but Anthony Davis got a pick and pop three, and that's something I'm just excited about. Like that shows that there is structure, there is change. That Anthony Davis even last year didn't rarely do a lot of pick and pop threes, and even if he did, either he wouldn't shoot the three or he'd give it to another player to set a screen for him to roll to the rim, and it's just like that little small detail is just something that I get excited about. Just because, like I said, there is change. There is Anthony Davis gonna shoot more pick and pop threes. Like he talked about in his press conference, how JJ Redick wants him to shoot more threes, and I couldn't know. I don't want no Darvin Ham 7 to 9 threes per game. Like I said, that was all cap, but I'll gladly take 5 to maybe 4 3-pointers a game. And if he shoots 2 for 5, if he shoots 3 for 5, 2 for 4, I'll be very much happy about that percentage and those being solid attempts, not forced attempts that Anthony Davis is just given open to by the opposition. So, like I said, structure, balance, and players knowing their role is something I can at least take away from this overall Lakers media day.
I think I also want to add on to that and talk about how even though there's a lot of structure, funny enough, that structure didn't make things more rigid for the players. It actually gave them a lot more flexibility, I think. We saw AD shooting the threes again. We saw certain players shooting the three ball, but it felt a lot more natural in terms of placement, in terms of shot selection than it was under Darvin Ham. We saw a lot more movement, a lot more cutting into the box in some of the training camp videos, something that didn't even happen before. And I guess if we're going to go back to the 3-point shot selection and how that was utilized, I feel like the training camp videos versus the Darvin Ham stuff that we've been seeing the past 2 seasons, it looks a lot more like flexibility versus just like mismanagement, I think. When we were looking at the last couple of seasons and how the offensive tactics or whatever there was left of it that was given to the Lakers, it felt very stifling. It felt like certain players who weren't meant to be 3 and D guys were stuck in the corner, not allowed to move, and then just like forced to settle for threes for what? And that's what it really felt like for a lot of the offense the last couple of seasons. Whereas we shift over to what we see in training camp, and we can only hope this is what we see throughout the season as well. There's still a lot of 3-point shooting, and we thought that 3-point shooting in general was going to be a concern, but it was actually just the way that it was used. You see there's a lot more movement on the floor. You see that there's more variety in shot selections. It's not just being stuck in the corner. You see there's a lot more options. Like if the 3-point shot didn't work out, we saw, like I said, Rui crashing the glass and dunking it back in and getting us 2 points still. I just think that the clearer vision and the structure and like this more sound team isn't limiting itself to the point of rigidity. In fact, I think it's quite the opposite. And it's to the point where they're understanding themselves and they can really play to like their full potential. We talk about some of these things and we see like basic movement and we see just like variety in offensive tactics, and we're just like celebrating it because we had absolutely nothing under Darvin Ham. And on one side of me is just like, what are we doing, man? Like, we're really celebrating the bare basics. But on the other hand, it just really shows that the potential of our team is at an all-time high right now. And we really haven't seen the full potential. In 2 years, we haven't seen the full potential of what this roster can bring. And even though I think certain moves should have been made in the summer and whatnot, I'm more excited to see just how much of a jump there's gonna be for this roster if we're really gonna like roll it back.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think another thing we can throw in there is transparency. I feel like this year, between coaching staff, players, they're a lot more transparent with the fans. Like, I don't know if you guys heard the quote, like JJ Redick talked about how Dalton Connect didn't have a great shooting game, and then you see the clips of him, kind of going out after practice, getting shots up, with Austin Reeves, I believe it was, and it just shows you, like, guys, they wanna get better, along with, like, the fact that he's like, "Alright, we're gonna run probably a nine-man rotation as well." So, that not only brings transparency between players, like, "Hey, realistically, everybody is not gonna play, but you have to be ready when called upon." We had a lot of injuries last year, and I felt like guys on this roster just weren't prepared. And every day I've seen from camps, like, just news, it's about how competitive it was on both ends of the floor, especially defense, which you love to hear. And it just seems like guys are taking everything with a chip on their shoulder. Like they want to compete. They see everybody saying like this isn't a championship type team. Well, I see almost every interview, guys are confident. Like Max Christie, the goal for him, he's like, the goal for us, win a championship. Simple as that. So it's not like we're going into the season thinking, hey, we need this and this for us to work. No, it's like the players have a chip on their shoulder, like, hey, we have what we need in house. Like, yeah, if they're gonna make a change, that's the coaching's decision. But we believe we can compete with what we have. And I like that a lot. And it kind of reminds me, like, remember we were all complaining after we broke up our championship team. Obviously, we didn't win a championship team. We didn't win a championship with this team yet, but it feels kind of nice to have something like similar in place. Like we're not completely starting over. Like every year, every play, every possession, every month, week, year that these guys stay together, they're only going to get better chemistry wise. So I'm excited to see what the starting five does this year from start to finish, which is not something that happened last year. Unfortunately, there's a lot of roster change and stuff like that, but I'm excited to see what these guys do. And another thing I want to bring up too is I'm noticing there's a lot of just different clicks, I'll say, on the Lakers team as far as like training and stuff. This is the third day in a row I've seen LeBron, Bronny, and Max Christie like doing like threes after practice as well. So that's really fun to watch. Those three guys kind of working, trying to get better. And I'm gonna plug Christie again because I've been preaching the Christie whistle. I thought it was gonna be last year, but I know it's gonna be this year. But it really seems like slowly, like people kind of criticize when we got him a little bit, kind of a younger guy, kind of scrawny, not gonna lie, no offense, but he's really growing into his frame. Like people forget he's literally only 21 years old. He's 21. Like he can be a part of this organization for a long time, and he's just now getting his start. Like he's had time to kind of understudy over under guys like LeBron James and Anthony Davis, and just be a sponge, like learn from those guys. So I'm excited to see what he does with his opportunities, and he looks like he's ready. I think obviously we're not doing hot takes yet, but I will say I think tomorrow you can expect some good and great Max Christie things because I think he's going to get a bulk of these minutes coming up in preseason. I'm assuming just to get him ready. But yeah, all in all, I agree with Alex. I agree with Alan. I think just seeing everybody like uniform together, on the same page, locked in. I like what you said. Like, yes, things are a little bit more strict and disciplined this year, but it hasn't changed the vibe. It's almost made things better. Like it kind of reminds me of I don't know if you guys seen that quote if you guys watch football about Baker Mayfield and Tom Brady. I think Baker was like making a point. He said that the Bucks wanted him to bring the joy back to the organization, and then Tom Brady he kind of talks about it, how his job wasn't to babysit people. It was to build a championship culture, and it's not. He wasn't there to hold your hand and go to Disney World. Like he was there to build a winning culture, and I think that's what the Lakers are doing this year. So I'm super excited. I think the first couple of days of training camp have looked great, and I'm excited to see what happens tomorrow when we get to see these guys officially in uniform for the first time in forever. So yeah, I'm excited. I know it's gonna be a good time. And those 83s were crazy. If we can get set plays where Anthony Davis is actually shooting threes on purpose, not just randomly late in the clock, I think that's healthy for this team as far as stretching the floor. It really makes it harder on the defense because if Anthony Davis is hitting threes, he's hitting mid ranges, he's in the post like he was in 2020. He's nearly impossible to guard. And plus, he's an underrated playmaker. We talked about this before. He's dangerous, man. So if JJ Redick really means it and he wants to make AD the hub on offense and defense this year, I think we're going to be dangerous and we're going to be scaring a lot of teams in the West.
Yeah, but before Alex, before you go, yeah, as mentioned, stay tuned as we'll be giving these predicting as well our top 3 players for that preseason game versus Minnesota, and we'll also be tier listing what would be our ideal 9-man rotation for this Lakers roster heading to tomorrow and of course the regular season and preseason. So yeah, tune in for that as we continue this podcast.
That was actually gonna be my point on like asking who y'all think the 9-man rotation is gonna be, but honestly, let's leave that for the tier list. I think that's gonna be just like a more fun way of talking about it. I think I'm just really excited about. I think a lot of us really do underrate just how much a different coaching change would be. I'm not saying JJ Redick is like a great coach. He's not no Eric Spoelstra or anything like that. He's no Popovich, prime Popovich. He's no Phil Jackson, not even close. He's a rookie head coach. But just going from an abysmal head coach who seemed to have very minimal understanding of just tactics. And because I saw a tweet where someone said that Darvin Ham was like a defensive minded coach. And I remember that's how he was promoted when he first came to the squad. But the fact that he was a defensive minded coach with very flawed defensive tactics kind of sums up our entire Darvin Ham tenure. So I think just going from that to someone who actually understands basketball, who has a vision, who has clarity, who has just like a strong basketball mind. And obviously, we still have yet to see how that'll transition into like the live game setting. And hopefully, that is also an improvement from what we saw from Darvin Ham. But it really is so important having the right coach. It's kind of like when you go into a certain subject or an extracurricular that you really love in high school or something. And it really, on one hand, if you have like the perfect mentor for you, someone who's very encouraging, someone who's very knowledgeable, someone who's very forward thinking, then it really can shape how you feel about the extracurricular. But on the other hand, if you have like the worst possible teacher or mentor, it could really ruin someone's passion. And I think you see that here with this team, and it makes me just even more excited about what JJ Redick will do. Because keep in mind, some of the greats did start from somewhere. Eric Spoelstra, I think about him a lot. He started as a video coordinator, and then eventually climbed the ranks into head coach. And I know that's very, very different from what JJ Redick has, because he was kind of thrusted into the head coach position. But I think that, I mean, we just gotta hope that there is a reason why he qualified, and we have to hope that there is a reason why he was given the position. And things are looking good so far.
Hey, I'll say look for the come up. I'm gonna start as a water boy, work my way up the organization, and become the head coach. Lead us to 7 championships. I got you guys. Loading in about 5-6 years. We'll see what happens in the future. I'll leave that for the 30s and 40s. But no, I agree with you. I think obviously JJ Redick isn't those guys, just purely based on he doesn't have any type of coaching experience. And I think the mystery of JJ Redick is both it's fun to think about like what he could be, but it's also scary on the fact that this is it. Like we've hired and fired so many coaches in the last 10 years that at this point this is our white flag. Like JJ Redick is the make or break for us. If he does good or bad, he's playing out that contract. We know that by now. Like, there's no way the Lakers fire another coach. So for that sake, I hope JJ Redick performs well. Just like you said, it was kind of something I was preaching like early on during the offseason during the dark times. I'll call it the dark Lakers timeline we had this offseason. Um, I really truly believe, and I'll stick with this. I think even with no changes, we are a 50% better team than we were last year without Darvin Ham. Like there's just levels to this. There was times where Darvin Ham wouldn't call the timeout as the team goes on like a 15-0 run. Doesn't call a timeout. Has a whole stack of timeouts. They're stacked up. Won't call them. There's times when you got guys just going out there playing. You got interviews. You got in-game footage of guys taking clipboards from Darvin Ham and running plays. Like I'm just seeing some of this footage that I didn't see before. It's basically like the Darvin. I know we joked about it before, like it's the Darvin X Files. There's a whole bunch of video clips coming out now, more than there was when obviously we were going throughout the season. But it just shows you like he wasn't organized. Like he didn't have this team. I feel like he didn't have their best intentions at heart. And I think JJ Redick off rip, especially with his coaching staff, we talked about it last week. He said he wanted to hire a whole bunch of basketball sickos, like guys who want to sit in the film room, see everything that's wrong. You got numbers guys, you got guys who have a good feel for the basketball. And that's women and men as far as like building our staff as well. So I'm really, really excited to see what happens going into this season. I think it's gonna be amazing. Like I don't want to hype us up. Obviously, I do try to be really optimistic at times for the Lakers community in general, but I really think we're gonna have a great year compared to the last couple ones. So I'm locked in. It was also good to see. I didn't talk about the Rui thing. Just seeing him crash the glass, man, almost made me cry. Like seeing Rui just like this is in a stint of like a 2 day two of training camp. He's already implementing like what JJ Redick's teaching him. Because in his interview, he talked about how JJ Redick want to use him more defensively this year and on the glass, and he said he's just gonna do whatever. Like I seen Rui with my own eyes say he can guard or he's gonna try to guard the 1 through 5, which don't get me wrong, I don't think he's guarding any 5. No offense. Not trying to hate on Rui, but it's just the confidence. Like that's a different level of confidence. Like I didn't see Rui wasn't saying that in the Darvin Ham system. Like he wasn't bought into the fact, but when you have a legit plan, you present it to your team and you truly show that you believe in them, they'll show the same respect back. And I think that's what we're seeing with this squad. But I did have a question for y'all. How do y'all feel about JHS? I'm hearing good things about Jalen Hitchfield. I heard he was a standout first day out there with Max Christie. So how are we feeling about JHS and hopefully like what do y'all feel about his role this upcoming season?
This is a really good question because I feel like Jalen Hood-Schifino had kind of a rocky start with the Lakers so far. I mean, the few showings that he's had have been kind of poor, just like really bad shot selection and like not taking care of the ball as well and as they should be on the NBA level, which is kind of sad because he is supposed to be a point guard. And but then like the moment he was showing some sort of potential, he gets injured. And I think it was some back injury that he had. Those are really serious, and I really am glad he's doing okay after that. And that just leaves us with a lot of unknowns and a lot of question marks. When it comes to JHS, like he kind of left us on a cliffhanger. Like we did not see the full of what he could really do. And even if he goes into like year 2, I'm not expecting to see every little thing that he does, and that is okay. What I will say is that I think the excitement for him is really valid because he is a really creative passer, and like he did have some really good showings for South Bay. And obviously it's year 2 and he's looking for that like real jump, I think. And I just hope the best for him, and I think that what we'll see from him in the Lakers squad fully depends on if JJ Redick believes that he's going to be in the rotation or not. I think he's going to be competing with hopefully not Christie, but maybe Christie, most likely even Gabe. Most likely even Gabe, who I think he'll be competing for in the rotation. Like that same point guard type of positioning. I think the main thing that JHS needs to work on in order to get that spot is probably defense. I'm not saying he's like a terrible defender or anything, but like Gabe, the reason why he's being put on the being speculated to be on the rotation is because he has very decent defensive awareness and has a lot more sound defensive tactics than the other guard options do. And I think that's going to be the big thing that would make him stand out. And I hope that's something he continues to work on too. But I'm really excited for JHS still. Like, even if he doesn't get a lot of time with the Lakers, he will do a lot of really great things for South Bay. I'm excited to see how his passing ability evolves. I'm really excited to see if he evolves to be like a pass first guy or a shoot first type of guy. Like, obviously, we see like glimpses of what we think he'll become, but he's only in his sophomore year. His game can evolve. His game can still change. Um, and yeah, I just think it depends on if he's going to be part of that 9-man rotation or not.
Yeah, for me, JHS, I'm tempered. Like I said, my expectations about how he'll be as a player. Like I said, as of right now, I am lean towards excitement, but sort of at least worried that he could not excite or even show out during the preseason. Like I said, when it comes to the wording and how JJ Redick is using and also praising him, I want to feel good about it. But like I said, that's what a head coach is supposed to do with a young player. Like, he's supposed to praise him, he's supposed to give him his due, and you're supposed to elevate and help JHS be more confident, because heading to last season and also him missing the summer league, you could imagine like his mentality could be low, or he's like, hey, I have to work my butt off to be a part of this Lakers rotation, or like I said, all those trade rumors that us as Laker fans and also Laker Nation in general were including him in. So it's just like, when it comes to JHS, I don't want him to be nervous or at least overplay than he should be playing. And I want him to just, like I said, find his role and be the player that he should be. And although he's shooting a lot of threes right now, trying to improve his shot, I would rather him be a excellent playmaker than shooter when it comes to that point guard position. Like I said, when it comes to his competition, in my opinion, it's Gabe Vincent, it's Jordan Goodwin, who we just signed this offseason, and Bronny James. Bronny James is, in my opinion, competing with JHS for that point guard / combo guard spot, you can kindly say. So for me, JHS should be a excellent playmaker. Like I said, his shooting could look good. I want him to be confident. I want him to shoot. I don't know, like in terms of field goals, maybe like 3 for 5, maybe 3 for 7, if he does get those opportunities. But when it comes to his playmaking, I want him to be a defensive stopper, and I want him to find the open players. Like I said, for me, my type of point guard I grew up on the Chris Pauls, the Darren Williams, the Rajon Rondos. Those are the type of point guard I want. And when I think of JJ Redick, I feel like he wants that point guard as well. Like I said, he was teammates with Chris Paul. He teamed with Ben Simmons. Although Ben Simmons wasn't a great offensive player, he was still a great playmaker. Like say his time in New Orleans, I don't know who's a point guard there, but they had a solid guy in Jose Alvarado. I think they're probably on the same team at that time. So it's just like, I feel like JJ Redick wants that playmaking point guard more than the Steph Curry's, the Damian Lillard types, in terms of my opinion. I think looking at what that Lakers guard rotation will look like.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I think for me, I just want to see him be his best. I think for the Lakers, I think it's important throughout the preseason to put him under fire. And what I mean by that is, I think you play him as much as you can. Preseason games, if we're being honest, they don't matter. I think preseason, a lot of people obviously want to see them win, whatever. But me as a Lakers fan this year, I want us to use this time to figure out our full rotation, which we'll talk about later in the show. I think the only way to do that is play guys like Jalen Hood-Schifino, maybe a lot more minutes than he'll usually get. The Bronnies, the Dalton Connects of the world. Even Gabe Vincent, a guy who was injured last year. Like, you have to play these guys, I feel like, extended minutes opposed to like the Anthony Davises and LeBrons and Austin Reeves and Ruiz. Like, obviously they're gonna play a little bit, but I'm really more curious to see how those guys perform. But yeah, I've seen the clips. I mean, he's got a little bit more of a new jump shot. It looks a little less janky, but it still looks a little bit, you know, experimental type. I don't know how to describe it. It just looks like JHS jump shot. I'll just call it. So I don't know, man. I think he definitely has the potential. I mean, he was drafted in the first round for a reason. He was proven at the college level. I think it's just taking him a little bit longer for his offensive game to translate. And we've seen the same thing when we first had Max Christie on the floor. Like, we talked about it, like early on, Max Christie, he didn't look ready at all. And you know what happens? You get humbled. You go out there, you kind of play a little bit, bad basketball. You go down a little bit to the G League. You learn, you get better, learn the system. You come back and you play better. I think the only thing for Lakers fans is we haven't got our chance to see the next version of Jalen Hood-Schifino in the NBA level. Like, people don't pay attention to G League and won't know that he was playing great games down there. Only thing is, we didn't get to see him in summer league to perform and show out what he's learned. So I think coming up these next couple games, we need to see more Jalen Hood-Schifino. Like, that's just the truth. So I think he definitely is far from what people are trying to say a bust. We haven't seen him play enough to call him that. So I think he's gonna have a great preseason, I'll say. and I just want to see him play basketball. Allen's right. Like it shouldn't be any type of pressure from his point of view. He should just go out there play basketball. We need more natural playmakers on this roster. We have a lot of different specialists, but as far as like strictly playmaking, I mean, it's probably Bron. Obviously, is our best playmaker. D'Lo is an underrated playmaker. I feel like Reese can make plays at times, but as far as that backup position, we're kind of missing that from the guard spot. So he has a good chance to get those backup minutes if he produces well. So we'll see what happens. I'm excited to see what he does. I'm assuming he's gonna play a good amount of minutes tomorrow. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, I was just curious about how y'all felt about Jalen Hood-Schifino.
I guess this could be, unless there's anything else that y'all want to talk about real quick in terms of media day, I think this could be a good way of also transitioning some stuff about the preseason games that are coming up starting tomorrow. And the reason why I'm bringing it up right now is because I just saw something from Daniel Strickland that where it says JJ Redick said LeBron and AD are quote unquote going to play this weekend, quote, but would not say which games. So I guess with that, I just wanted to get a good feel for what everyone's expectations are going into the preseason. I know we kind of hinted that this is a little less pressure than like the regular season and playoffs, obviously, but I just want to know what your guys' general expectations are for the team going into the preseason.
Honestly, I just want to see the younger guys play, if I'm being like completely honest. I think we'll get like a quarter, maybe two out of LeBron James and AD, very stagnant on minutes, just so they can kind of get a feel, which they don't really need. I mean, it's LeBron James and AD. I think it's more so of seeing like the growth in the new JJ Redick system, as far as like what plays they're running, what sets they're coming out in offense and defense, and try to get that ready before the season starts. But other than that, expectations, I just want to see the younger guys and the rotational players play a max amount of minutes, just to see how good they do this year. So that's my expectations. I want those guys to go out there, play, perform, especially guys like Max Christie as well, who is going to have a elevated role this season. I want to see him go out there, get minutes, like kind of lead different rotations. As far as like scoring option, playmaking, like we've seen him do it before, but not with like a main type of unit. So that's kind of what I'm looking for as far as expectations. I'm not even going into this thing thinking about like wins or losses. I'm kind of just I want to see how the JJ Redick system looks. That's what I'm curious about. Like I want to see what opportunities like Austin Reeves or D'Angelo Russell gets as far as play sets. So that's what I'm looking forward to this upcoming week. Not too stressed about how long Bron and AD play. It is what it is. I don't really expect Ant and all those guys to play a lot of minutes either. So I'm just excited to see Lakers basketball, honestly.
I think that's a good way to put it. I guess for my expectations, um, I think for the most part I agree. I do want to see like all of our team get to play a little bit. I definitely want to see the younger guys, especially, get their first feel of like an NBA level court. Because I know they had experience with the summer league. They're gonna get a little bit more experience now. They're like going small tiers, going from summer league to like preseason level and the rosters there to if they can test their waters, maybe NBA games like regular season, maybe not all of them, but maybe. So I think just like a gradual like warming up to the NBA environment could be really helpful. I will say though, I do want to see a little bit, at least a little bit of LeBron and AD in our entire starting five, to be honest, because I think this is a good way to see if, and obviously I have practice and training camp for this, but I think in a live game setting, it'd be a really good way to see if the starting unit works. And I think just having it figured out fast and just being able to make adjustments going into the regular season, I think could be really useful as well. I don't want to see all the starting five. I don't want to be playing like it's the regular season, but I do want to see a little bit of minutes from like our more like from our players that are kind of higher up in the pecking order as well. So, although I think the priority will be just like everyone to get their minutes and everyone to get their feel for the core, I say everybody because I am including those higher in the pecking order as well.
Yeah, when it comes to these preseason game, like I said, I expect LeBron and AD, if they were to play, I don't expect them to play the heavy minutes. I think they may play maybe 10 to 12, and majority that's going to be them just trying to, at least for JJ Redick, trying to have an adjustment and see what they are looking at as both as a starting lineup and also as a team. And like I said, it's gonna be interesting to see how like I said, shout out to Darvingham. Like Darvingham had a ability to like split between um, putting LeBron James with a certain lineup and putting AD with a certain lineup, and that's something I do want to see if JJ Redick can implement of how who can spend time with LeBron James and who can spend time with Anthony Davis. Just because I think that you can still do that. Although that was the majority of the time of Darvingham trying to lessen this Laker team when they had some scoring droughts because we know that certain lineups didn't mesh well. But I think that that's a good thing to have where you can put certain lineups with a guy with LeBron. You can put certain lineups with Anthony Davis, and I think that that's something that should be continued onto this season's roster. Just because, like I said, our bench lineup, or as JJ Redick said, that a 9-man rotation, our first four is questionable in my opinion. And I think that, like I said, it gives some rest to both guys and the ability to be flexible and versatile with the lamps that we go with for this year. So, yeah.
Yeah, that is a good point. I am curious to see what he goes to, like as far as like go-to lineups. Because last year, I felt like there's no way you can have a lineup without LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and or a combination of Austin Reeves and D'Lo on the floor at all times, which Darvingham always found a way to mess that up somehow. And during those times, we would just have no type of flow. Guys just didn't fit together as far as play styles. So maybe JJ Redick has that in mind, like, hey, maybe have a lineup where D'Lo kind of thrives when I need my three other main guys or four other main guys to take a rest, or maybe there's an Austin Reeves type of lineup that optimizes his offensive scoring and his ability to play make as well. And same thing, vice versa with LeBron James and AD. So I'm curious to see how he mixes and matches like different minutes for these guys because he did say 9-man rotation. So it does seem like at all times, like maybe two max amount of people, like three people go out at the same time as far as like just efficient lineup. So I'm curious to see what it looks like. Like we said, JJ Redick right now he's just at. I'm gonna just keep baseline at right now, I'm gonna start like just normal. Right now, my expectations for JJ Redick are just normal. On a scale of just worst, normal, good, and great. He's at normal for me. Like he hasn't done anything wrong. And he hasn't shown me anything yet as well. So I'm kind of just looking to see in the preseason. Well, that was a good question you asked too. I think my expectations for the preseason, I got another answer too, is I want to see how good JJ Redick can be. Obviously, this is more of a crafty situation. Can JJ Redick get minutes without optimizing like LeBron James and AD, like the usual 30 plus minutes? Can he get wins with the other guys on this roster as well? So I'm curious to see how he outcoaches. I'll just say, yeah, I'm just curious to see if he can outcoach his opponents, honestly, coming into these preseason games.
Yeah, and as well, these shout out to the Minnesota Timberwolves head coach and Chris Finch, and go up against JJ Redick. JJ Redick has a tough task. Chris Finch is no joke, arguably a top 10 head coach goes to NBA with Chris Finch, and he's gonna have still a same roster within the older veterans in Mike Conley or Rudy Gobert. And then they're added the additions of Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo, which I don't know if they'll be playing that game. Like I said, I think they practice. I'll try to look at reports and stuff. But I'd imagine Nas Reed will be the starter upon the first preseason game. So, like I said, Minnesota's gonna be a really good team heading to that first game, and JJ Redick, it's not. I'm gonna say it's make or break for JJ, but it's something where, hey, JJ, although you do want to be secretive and not showcase your entire game plan, let's pull some stuff, JJ. Let's be a little magician and show your tricks out there. So, like I said,
Yeah, when you said Nas Reed, I immediately just got PTSD for what he did to us multiple times throughout the season. He just every time he's seen us, I don't know if we said something about him or we didn't draft him at some type of time in his career, but he literally plays like he hates us. And it's impressive. I mean, he was hitting shot after shot inside, taking to the lane, hitting three after three. Like, hopefully JJ Redick knows off rip, hey, this Nas Reed guy, he's a pretty good 3-point shooter. Maybe we should put a hand out there. So I'm excited to see. Like you said, I don't know if Julius Randle or Dante is playing, but I'm just gonna assume that they are. And even if they aren't, like you said, they still have the same core team. Only person they lost out on, not to say only person like that, but Karl Anthony Towns, but the rest of the rotation is exactly the same. So we'll see how things look for them.
Yeah, I mean, we all know what happened with the Timberwolves, the Karl Anthony Towns trade. We all know. We all saw what happened. It shook the world. It shook the world for all of us. Um, I think we're not gonna see a lot of that, especially not a lot of DiVincenzo or Randall, just because they're still getting used to the team, and they literally got traded maybe days before training camp started for everybody. So if we see them, it'll be pretty minimal. I do believe that Naz Reid is gonna have kind of an elevated role. It looked like the Timberwolves were putting a lot of trust in Naz Reid in the last like season or two, I think. Um, and even the fans that I've been seeing, a lot of them did love Karl Anthony Towns, but a lot of them were also just really excited to see Naz Reid get a bigger role, and they're just excited to see him every time. I feel like I see like a fake Naz Reid account on every social media where they post nothing but the words Naz Reid. Um, but I feel like the hype around him is there, and I think that's why there was this really huge trade with Karl Anthony Towns. It'll be interesting to see how it matches up with the Lakers. I don't think it'll be like the full story because again, who knows if we're gonna even play our like 100% like full starting five or whatnot. But it'll be interesting to see because like Earl said, aside from Karl Anthony Towns, the roster is pretty similar. A lot of the foundational players, except for Karl Anthony Towns, are still there. It'll be interesting to see the roles that Julius Randle is going to take up. I think he probably will be competing with probably Naz Reid in terms of like if he'll be in the starting lineup or in the second rotation, or maybe they'll find a way to make a lineup with both of them. I think if well, it'll be interesting to see what the offense looks like there because like I feel like Karl Anthony Towns was a huge part of their offensive efficiency. I think that'll be the biggest change for the Timberwolves. It's just offensive efficiency and like how they're gonna like um, how they're gonna take care of the fact that Karl Anthony Towns isn't there anymore for that. And then DiVincenzo probably gonna be contributing a lot, most likely from like the bench rotation, but with a lot of like shooting prowess for sure. I think that's gonna be something that'll be really interesting to see from Minnesota. It is just a preseason game. We have no idea what to expect. I think we're facing them pretty early on in the regular season too. I think I'll double check later. So I think I'm just actually pretty excited to see how everything turns out for both teams.
Yeah, and for those listening on Twitter, YouTube, playback, and etc., feel free to drop any questions. My question to you guys listening is that um, who's the better point guard? Like, not point guard. Who's the better player in which Minnesota should start? Julius Randle or Naz Reid? Feel free to drop these answers during on Twitter or playback. So yeah.
That's a good question. I'm gonna go Julius, ex-Laker. I think the thing about Julius is people forget he kind of brought back the Knicks. Like when the Knicks just weren't good at all, he became like a 20 plus point per game scorer, like out of nowhere. Like he was kind of put in that position to be a number one option, and he kind of handled it in a good manner. Like he held things down. Obviously, I mean not Julius Randle, Jalen Brunson came along. Things kind of changed. Jalen Brunson kind of took that torch. What a year that year or the next year right after that kind of took the front lines of like carrying over the weight. And unfortunately for the Knicks, I'll say unfortunately for like both sides of the situation, it sucks for Julius. Obviously, he gave a lot to that organization, and same with Carl Anthony Towns. Like that's been your franchise player, never really asked to leave, especially when things were bad. Then he kind of just got randomly traded throughout the night, which kind of sucked. I heard the story about that as well. Like he really had no implication that they wanted to trade him, which is definitely like interesting. That's just I guess they called it. They try to disguise it with the business side of things, but I mean, some notice to your franchise player. I know I know Anthony Edwards is there too. Like he's obviously their new franchise player, but at the same time, like Carl was holding it down for a long time. Um, and I did see that meme. Like anytime like a Minnesota player leaves, they go win a championship. So Knicks fans' odds are in high favors right now, so we'll see what happens with that. But I have to go Julius Randle. I think his ability to kind of do everything on the floor, it's impressive. He can shoot, he can rebound, he can defend. Only thing I would say is he's gonna have to learn how to share that ball because Anthony Edwards is very ball dominant as well. But I'm sure they'll work it out. I think it's gonna be a fresh start for both of those guys. Julius Randle is kind of like a tougher built NBA player. Not saying Cat. I'm not going with the Cat is soft narrative because I just don't think that's true. I think he just has a different play style. Like he's kind of more of a shooting big. He's shown his moments of dunking and stuff like that, but I consider him more like a stretch type player. Julius is kind of more of a physical, like he was physical first, then his jump shot kind of developed where he can be that 3-level scorer. So I think Julius is going to fit in perfectly with the Timberwolves. And I think he might fit better next to Rudy Gobert than Karl Anthony Towns, in my opinion. I think he's a lot more flexible in defense compared to Cat. Um, Cat can't guard guards, no offense. Barely small forwards at times. He's kind of a guy I feel like we could hunt. Julius Randle doesn't have the same implications. Like he's a strong guy, and he definitely can move around fast on the defensive end as well. So yeah, I think Julius gets that part, and then you still have the best 6 man in the NBA, Nas Reed, coming in for backup, of course.
I think I do agree, and I think that in general, Julius Randle would take the starting spot over Nas Reed. I think I actually just saw like a tweet that where Chris Finch kind of confirmed that yesterday. I literally just saw it, so I think Julius Randle is more likely to start, but I think it could be rotational, and I think that maybe it could be a fit thing, or we'll just see a lot of minutes from Nas Reed. I think even if Julius Randle starts, there's going to be huge minutes for Nas Reed still because kind of what you hinted at, they have two different profiles. I think Julius Randle is very physical, very like very much like the physical type of big man that can really just like crowd the paint, but like also expand his game a little bit. So that he can either pair up with Rudy Gobert or give a tiny bit of diversity for Rudy Gobert. Whereas, like, I think Nasrid has more. He's also like pretty big and has his own like interior game, but I think he has more of a bag around the wings than maybe Julius Randle would. I think that's probably the one thing that would set him apart from Julius Randle. I think defensively, Julius Randle could do a little bit more, although Nas Reed isn't too bad either. But I do think when it comes to Julius Randle, number one, like you said, we'll see how the ball movement goes. I mean, Anthony Edwards is very like heavy on the ball as well. Julius Randle might want to be on the ball a lot as well. We'll see how they play. Most likely, Mike Conley is gonna be their point guard, so he has to start it off. Maybe he'll like start it off, get off the ball, and then focus on shooting. But seeing that type of stuff, we'll see how the ball movement goes. It might be a little bit weird with Julius Randle there, and also just the fact that I feel like sometimes Julius these days, I think sometimes Julius Randle has like issues with efficiency in general and consistency in general. And I think that is going to be where like when that shows up, that is when he's gonna lose minutes to Nas Reed. I think he'll still be like a starter over him, but if he shows like really bad form, I feel like when Julius Randle's in bad form, like everyone kind of sees it. And that is going to be where Nas Reed is gonna step in and get the most minutes, I think. So I think Julius Randle will start, but the minutes will be shared quite a bit, in my opinion.
Yeah, like I said, I think Julius Randle ultimately could be the starter just because he's more experienced. He has the ability to be physical defensively and be a great playmaker, as shown by the combination of him and Rudy Gobert. Like I think that Rudy Gobert could catch a ton of lobs from Julius Randle. As like I said, he's a high IQ, great post player, and definitely a player in which is still great. Like I said, if he stayed in the New York Knicks, if that trade didn't happen, I think Julius Randle would have been great in terms of at least that Knicks lineup was it like Jalen Brunson, OG, who else is on our roster? Josh Hart, etc. So Julius Randle still would have been a great Knicks player if he were there, and I think this trade does help Minnesota, sort of. Like I said, better defensively with Julius, and yeah, just look what the Lakers can do versus that Minnesota Timberwolves lineup. At least anything else before we go into our tier list of the 9-man rotation? Uh,
I will just say I did see some notable tweets, positive tweets. Usually the segment is like meme worthy, but I did see D'Angelo Russell say he's been relating a lot with JJ Redick, getting into his bag from a coaching standpoint with attention to detail, from a play calling standpoint, whether it's live action, A2Os. Russell says he's very much looking forward to playing for him. So that's really good to hear. I also did see a tweet about Rui Hachimura. I can't find it right now, but Rui Hachimura said that Jalen Hood was his standout younger player on the roster when asked about, who showed the most improvement so far. So I don't know if it's just hype. There was that meme last year with the Jalen Hood was the training camp MVP, and someone in the comments said MVP 2 years in a row in training camp. So we'll see what happens. I just needed to translate into real live basketball. So yeah, that's the only thing I have on my end.
I think that's really interesting. And if we're talking about Jalen Hood, I even saw a tweet because Rui was just interviewed, like as we were doing this podcast right now, and he did talk about Jalen Hood too. Said that he's been playing a lot stronger, and that he's been playing with a lot more confidence as well. So I think that is going to be something interesting to see. We will give him a training camp MVP, but we can always just hope that that does transition into the game situation.
And of course, after we do our tier list, we'll go into our top 3 players, predictions for the score, and also other stuff regarding that preseason game. So, move on to the tier list. Oh, let me lock it in a minute. Feel free to fill noise while I do this.
I don't know. I've been seeing a lot of interesting things about Rui. I think Rui also brought up an interesting point about JJ Redick. While we can talk real quick, saying how the fact that he was just in the league makes it easier to relate to the players. And I think it's interesting because we talk about how he's a rookie coach and he's inexperienced. But I guess that's just like a flip side perspective of how his younger age can actually help the players to a certain extent. But I don't know. That's just what I saw. I'm curious what y'all think, just real quick before we do this tier list.
Oh, I think I was a little delayed a little bit. What was the question again, Alex?
I just put out the tweet because Rui was being interviewed for I guess just before the preseason. He said something about JJ Redick and how the fact that he was just in the league actually makes it easier for the team to really connect with him and understand him to a certain extent. So I guess it's just like, what do you think about that perspective in contrast with the inexperience of him being a coach?
Yeah, I think it kind of brings out these the same mindset of the quote unquote player coach. Like I said, we've seen top player coaches who are former players, Steve Kerr, um, Chauncey Billups, etc. And that kind of brings a comfort to the players. Like I said, we're coached from a Darvin Ham, a assistant coach, a player, of course, a player coach, but wasn't a quote unquote player coach from what we saw, of course. But just it's a good thing to hear. Like I said, I want these players to be comfortable heading to the season, but I think JJ Redick will make them different from sort of the inexperienced assistant coach who was a part of great coaching staffs. I think JJ Redick brings a discipline and he brings a knowledge of, hey, I am a player coach. I am I'm not gonna say a fun coach, but I have a plan and I want you guys to stick to this plan. I want you guys to be great. I want you guys to know your role and play at your best. Like I said, JJ Redick, like I said, to at least censor a bit, he is a piece of S word sometimes because we know as a former player, he likes to talk trash. He likes to be arrogant. And he also is a player who also played under Coach K. And Coach K was a guy who, of course, he's a great guy, um, great coach and everything. But at the same time, we've seen during games, we've seen in interviews that Coach K can be a mean guy to both his players. But what makes Coach K great is that he's also a strategic guy. He's a very much a player coach, but also a coach in which challenges his players, and that's what I want to see from JJ Redick. I'm not going to hold him to the same standard as Coach K, but I want him to be a great coach and coach his team to not only have fun, but at the same time be disciplined, be smart, and just play overall at their best. I think that's one of my goals in which I look at this preseason matchup versus Minnesota, and then of course the games after.
Yeah, I agree with both of you guys. I feel like JJ Redick, to me, I think he might be the new trend of like current basketball coaches, like coaches who like currently played in the last 10 years, kind of transitioned to the new era of NBA basketball. Like he's played through a lot of different systems. He's seen a lot of different things, especially as a shooter. Not saying he's the greatest player ever, but he was one of the most competitive players we've seen in basketball. So maybe if JJ Redick does end up turning out great, he could be the starting trend of the new age of head coaches. Because eventually, like we I think like eventually there's going to be new coaches. Like that's just how the system goes. His means of getting here were just not traditional. Like he kind of skipped the line as far as like having to build experience. Like he kind of just got it based off of his knowledge, like the way he presented the game as far as like online media. Like that's just new age. So he could just be like the prototypical new age baseline start for new head coaches. So we'll see what happens. If that ends up being the case, then we pretty much lucked out. At the same time, we really didn't have many choices. So I think things just work out great for both sides. JJ Redick is a guy who doesn't like to lose. He's one of the most competitive people when it comes to basketball. I mean, we've seen his college resume and how he was acting like Alan said, like he takes things very personal. Like he wants to win. Like his nature is to compete in everything he does. So having that type of culture, I think honestly, that fits the Lakers culture we were looking for. A guy who is not only a guy who doesn't like to lose, but also a guy who can take accountability when he's wrong. And I think that's two things that Darvin Ham just didn't do a great job of when he was our head coach. Not that didn't name drop Darvin Ham, trying to move on from him, no offense, but it's just the truth. So shout out to JJ Redick. I'm excited to see what he does and seeing all the players kind of buy into what he's been putting out, especially in practices, going over film and stuff like that. It's encouraging to see. Like when, like I know players did the prototypical thing of like sticking up for Ham and stuff like that in the beginning, but we haven't seen like it's almost like I think I was saying it like it's almost like the little things that he's doing that should have been done are getting praised. Like that's how bad it was. Like him going through practices and making adjustments live throughout practices. That's something that should have been done. And since it wasn't, like we see all these stories of guys like, oh yeah, we love the way JJ Redick handles things. Like, and it's not necessarily a shot at Darvin Ham. It kind of is, but it's just showing you like the new standard has changed. Like I feel like we're finally going back to Lakers culture. So hopefully it's not just hype. Hopefully, we can see it in action tomorrow and moving forward into the season.
So yeah, let's get into the tier list. As shown right here, this will be available on Tier Maker. If you don't know the website, shout out Tier Maker. It'll be under for my Twitter. It's ACI underscore media underscore. So yeah, look around that if you're on Team Maker. And yeah, this were organized by the players. I didn't have a shout to Quincy Oliveira and was it Keller Kelly. I don't think they'll be part of the rotation. I think they'll be like the G League guys. So I include them in this tier maker. But as shown, the top part is starters. Below that is first four off the bench. Like I said, as AJ Rick wants to have a 9-man rotation, so it's going to be the first four off the bench. After that, the role players. So role players will be players who could play due to players being injured or players playing due to a specific matchup or, like I said, JJ Redick makes some adjustments and he wants a certain player to be playing with our starters or our bench players, etc. After that, the reserve. So reserve is like players who may not play too much. You can see them in the G League, or like I said, they'll have 0 minutes for that night. After that, two-way contracts, which I put already, Christian Coloco, Colin Castleton, and Armand Traore. And then we have our injured side for Vando and Christian Wood. Of course, we'll include them and what would be their projected position within this Lakers rotation. But as of right now, they're on the injured side. So let's start with our starters. And at least for, of course, although JJ Redick did name as D starters, what would be your ideal starter list?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I really like the starting lineup in general. Like looking at everybody on this roster, the lineups you can make. One could argue you can put in Jared Vanderbilt. I think that's pretty much one of the I won't say one of the only substitutions people might make. But yeah, maybe just a Vando in for Rui, but at the same time, I think Rui just plays really well with that starting lineup. So I think it's the best lineup we can get as far as starters. After that, I think we'll figure everything else out.
I was gonna say something similar. I think that this is the best lineup we could get for starters as of right now, as of what we know of everybody's form right now. The biggest change would obviously be Vandal for Rui, but like I'm a personal believer that this season's gonna be Rui's season, just based off of the way he's being used is so starkly different from the way that he's been used the last 2 seasons. I think just like because I think he has the biggest shift in that, he is gonna have, in my opinion, like the biggest jump this season. I hope and I think. So I think that Rui getting this starting opportunity, especially given how much of his game is being used and being exposed to the Lakers' eyes for the first time. I think this is the best lineup we can get for now. Obviously, form is going to change. Injured players are going to come back. But for now, I feel good about this lineup.
Yeah, like I said, in terms of the starting lineup, I think it's a great lineup. For Vando, ideally he would be part of my starting lineup and Rui come off the bench. Like I said, I want to start off with a defensive strong lineup, and I think that the Lakers can go into a offensive lineup with Rui answering for LeBron James or even Vando within at least half of that first quarter. Like let's say like at the 7 or like 6 minute mark. For his Lakers lineup, but as the circumstances right now, Vando is out due to injury. This is also to or be is listed on Twitter, playback or etc. Feel free to drop your first 4 off the bench. Who will be the first 4 players to enter the game in your opinion? And yeah, please let's start off the first 4 off the bench.
Yeah, I'll just go ahead and throw out a name. I'll start on easy, Mo. I feel like this is a necessity. It has to be. Jackson Hayes, just because we need another big in the rotation as far as like substitution. So I think Jackson Hayes definitely will be one of those first 4 off the bench to start off the season for sure.
Yeah, I think Jackson Hayes would have been like my first choice as well, just because of fit and just because of like compatibility with the lineup. And okay, I know the starters is kind of lined up based on just like 1 through 5 position. If we're gonna order the rest of the tiers based on most to least likely, I think Jackson Hayes being first makes sense just because I think he's like pretty bona fide to be off the bench like that because of fit. And then I think I'm gonna pick who I think is the second most likely. I think actually Max Christie. He is younger, but he's been very, very talked about well. He's been talked about very well by JJ Redick. I think he is one of the few players on our squad that really has two-way potential. And I think he just continues to show jumps after every season. Even with how limited he was being used in the second season, he still showed a little bit of a jump into the third season. And I think his potential is sky high. He has one of the highest potentials out of the entire roster. And I think there's a little bit more competition in terms of like, I think he's more of like a bona fide 2, although he's had to control the ball here and there. I think a lot more of the competition on who will be coming off the bench first is within the point guards and those who would be a little bit more combo guards. Whereas Max Christie is pretty comfortable at the 2 position, even has some game along the wings. So I think because of fit and because I think everyone, including the coaching staff, is really excited to see him play. Max Christie would be one of the first 2 off the bench, actually.
Yeah. The next person I think will be part of that first 4 will be Gabe Vincent. I think will be our starting backup point guard, and I kind of leave the next one up for debate for this one. But at least I'll talk more about Gabe Vincent. That he is a player. He talked about from shout out to Mike Trudell. He talked about in a post game. He said he noted that he's comfortable playing alongside either Reeves or D'Angelo Russell in the backcourt bench rotation, which is still undetermined. He likes that all 3 can handle the ball and play off ball offensively. So I think that kind of puts a sign in which Gabe Vince was going to have a big role heading to next season. I don't want to see small ball lineups. We're done with small ball. We're done with small ball lineups. JJ, please. I want to see Gabe Vincent, DeAndre Russell at the 2, Austin Reeves at the 3. I don't want to see Gabe Vincent, Max Christie, and Austin Reeves as our 3-guard lineup. No more small ball lineups. No more 3-guard lineups. We're done with that, JJ. Please, I'm begging. But also, for that last spot, I think it's highly debatable. And like I said, I'm also asking about Twitter, Playback, etc. Cam Reddish or Dalton Connect as the last 4th person on this 9-man rotation? Who should it be?
Oh man, this is a tough one. I think it's a harder choice than what people realize. Like, obviously, Dalton Connect, he is our future as far as, like, we just drafted him. Definitely a steal. Like, he fell into our hands. But if we're talking about, like, first 4 off the bench right now, it's a tough one. I think I'm going to go with, I don't know, man. I don't know. Let me, I feel like it's a harder choice than what I thought it would be, in my opinion. I think that I'll have to go with, man, that's crazy. We do have a lot of players in this team. I think I have to go with, I might have to go Cam Reddish, man. I know it sounds crazy. I get it. But Cam Reddish, he has the size. I think the biggest thing with him is offensive consistency. And arguably, that problem can be fixed with a more set play style with him and expectations as far as, like, his role in the JJ Redick system. So I think I'm going with Cam Reddish. I did see, he looks like he's serious business. He got the fresh cut all the way down. And can't lie, usually when guys cut all their hair off drastically, they play great basketball. So I think Cam Reddish definitely has an argument to take that 4th off the spot, but I think it's very close, and Dalton is right there interchangeable. But if we're talking about experience over everything, I think Cam Reddish gets the edge slightly.
I think I'm gonna like kind of play devil's advocate, but then also kind of just like support. I'm gonna support your point first. I think for Dalton Connect, his biggest weakness, well, obviously there's a little bit of concerns about like he wasn't getting his shot up during practice, so that might have changed the view a little bit. But I think the biggest concern is that Cam Reddish is more defensively sound than Dalton Connect, and I think Dalton Connect needs to develop a defensive game in order to really solidify his spot, I believe. Now we can say that maybe Max Christie and Gabe Vincent can kind of handle that off the bench, but we would obviously like upping his defensive game and fixing his shooting efficiency could be the way to go. Um I'm not saying I disagree with Cam Reddish. I think right now I would slightly have him over Dalton Connect, but I think I'll play the devil's advocate point in the sense that I think if it's JJ's lineup, he is very, very, very high on Dalton Connect still. I remember during the press conference, Dalton Connect actually talked about how like he and JJ Redick were having talks about like what he needs to do to get into the main rotation, and even in what to do to get to the let me see, to get and to get to the full rotation. Like they're having conversations about that, and like JJ Redick was giving him real advice on just like learning from all the vets and all that. So I think I'm okay with putting Cam Reddish on like the first 4 off the bench, but if this is JJ's lineup and we see Dalton Connect instead of Cam Reddish, I wouldn't be that surprised because he seems very high on Dalton Connect. He seems to have a very, very, very deep vision of what Dalton Connect is going to do for the team in like a pretty quick, like in a pretty quick span of time. Like obviously he needs development, but I think JJ Redick seems pretty open to the idea of like having him have an impact from the start.
I think both you guys bring up some valid points. For me personally, I'm always on the side of playing a veteran over a rookie. and I feel I'm going Cam Reddish over Dalton Connect as of right now. I think in that first game it should be Cam. I don't think we should overexpose our rookie first into a, of course, veteran chemistry already known Minnesota team. And I think that, of course, you do want to throw them onto the fire and see what they do and see them develop. But at the same time, I think Cam Reddish, who I would suppose is healthy right now and prepared, and I think he knows his role. Like I said, going back to last season, he was a 3-and-D defender as he was brought on. Now, was he the best 3-and-D defender? No, but he did his thing here and there in certain games. Shout out to that series versus the Phoenix Suns during the playing tournament. He did very good there, and I think that he'd be still a valuable player on this Lakers roster for this season, you could say. So I would put Cam Reddish in my rotation. So like I said, right now it's 2v1. Like I said, for the chat, for where we on Twitter, Playback etc., feel free to drop your opinion down below, and we'll look at them through this podcast. After that, for role players, who would be the role players?
I think this. Wait, sorry. I was gonna say I think this kind of goes into our last conversation. I think Dalton Connect has a really high chance of having some minutes. I think even though I brought up the point for Dalton Connect, I did kind of agree that Cam Reddish is going to get it more just because of experience and also because of his more defensive soundness. I think Dalton Connect though is going to get a lot of minutes. I think there's going to be a lot of focus on developing him, and I know Bronny is our other rookie, and he will more likely be just developing outside of the game time sense. But I think for Dalton's development, they're really focusing on getting him out there and getting him a role as quick as they possibly can. So I think he'd be the first person in my head in terms of like role players.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I agree. I think Dalton definitely is gonna kind of fight his way into that rotation. He has a good chance to do it because he is like on paper, he's like the future of this team. Like he's our youngest, well, not youngest, but he's our most potential wise player we have on the roster, I feel like, at his age. So I agree with that. I think the second role player I'm going to put right here is Jordan Goodwin. We talk about vets. He's a guy who can shoot the three ball. He's an underrated playmaker in my opinion as well. He can play some defense too. So I definitely can see him in some like match specific lineups, and or if we have injuries or something like that, or somebody's not having the best efficient game. Maybe that's Gabe Vincent. Maybe that's D'Lo. I definitely could see him being plugged in at some point as just a role player to have on watch. So I'll go Jordan Goodwin with the next pickup for us on here.
Do you know what's really interesting about this tier list is that a lot of this is going to shift once Vando and Wood are healthy. A lot of this is going to shift because Vando could arguably be on the starters lineup or the very first off the bench, and then Christian Wood, he's going to fight with Jackson Hayes on who's going to be more compatible. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this all moves once our injured players are fully healed and fully ready. I kind of want to leave. Do we want to keep adding players to the role player tier, or are we going to put the rest of them in reserves? Because JHS is one of those players that JJ Redick is kind of high on as well. And even Rui and like the rest of the team are pretty high on right now. And I honestly think that, in my opinion, he would be next off the list. But I just don't know if he'd be in the role players role or in the reserves role yet. I think that's gonna really depend on what he does in the preseason. But what do you guys think?
Like I mentioned earlier in the podcast, I talked about how JH's competition was him and Jordan Goodwin. Not talking about Gabe Vincent, etc., but his main rival / competition is going to be Jordan Goodwin. Jordan Goodwin is a hustle player. We've seen the highlights. He can shoot the three. Now, is he an efficient three-point shooter? No, which I think JHS could probably beat him out in terms of competition-wise, but the defense and playmaking is going to be a even play field. I think JHS and Jordan Goodwin have to find their bright spots. They have to get steals. They have to be very much communicate very strongly when it comes to defensive switching and also how the Lakers are going to be a unit when they're on the court, both on offense and defense. So it's on both of them to compete. Now, I have the slight edge toward Jordan Goodwin, and me personally put JHS on the reserve role, like I said, in terms of his NBA experience and what we've seen on the court, highlights, etc. And yeah, I think that's sort of my thought around JHS being a role player / reserve. I think it's like it's a competition, but as of right now, Jordan Goodwin will have the slight edge in my opinion.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I mean, considering that if who we have in terms of like the rotation plus role players, that's already 11. So I think I'm okay with putting JHS on like the reserves. I think he is one of the more movable players depending on how his season goes. Same with Dalton, same with Jackson Hayes, same with Cam Reddish and Gabe. But for now, I think I'm okay with reserve. I'm happy with that, I think. This is gonna be a really interesting conversation for the next one, though. Maxwell Lewis at Bronny James. This is gonna be a really interesting conversation because I feel like during the summer league, we all said that Bronny James outperformed Maxwell Lewis, but neither of us really think that it was enough to show that Bronny was ready for the big league. So I'm really curious as to what everyone thinks, and I feel like they bring two fairly different skill sets as well. So yeah, what does everyone else think about that?
I think I'll say Maxwell Lewis. Like we talk about, I see him as a reserve player. I don't think he has played to a role player yet, and we haven't seen much via JJ Redick or any news about Maxwell Lewis. And I think that maybe he's doing good. He's working out well, but he's not competing enough to be a role player.
Yeah, I agree. We talked about like his play. We talked about his play in the setting of summer league, and it just wasn't great. He didn't show the leadership style needed to be a role player. I feel like he played a little bit selfish. Didn't really have a real feel of the game or how to play through the flow of the offense. Was forcing a lot of shots. Not to sound really just all negative, but he just didn't seem like he matured enough from his rookie year to his sophomore year. So for that reason, I definitely will keep him at reserve. And I guess rounding up our last name here, I think Bronny, I think he'll be reserved as well. Like he's a player that I think he'll be able to play a couple games just to see where his progress is. I think he'll get like one or two early on in the season, take on him a break. He'll have a G League run, come back, see what his progress is then, and then maybe play like a game or two, call him up around like if say we make the playoff time. So he's just on the roster. You never know what can happen. But that's kind of how I imagine his year to go, unless he just does something absolutely tremendous, and it's like, okay, we gotta have him on this main roster. Not saying it's impossible, but the likelihood of that, honestly, we're not expecting that. Like from our point of view as fans, and I don't even think that they're really expecting it. All I think he's trying to do his first year, I feel like, is just grow, like learn. I heard in all his interviews he wants to be like a sponge, learn from as many people as he can, and just enjoy this process. And I think that's what he's going to do. So for me, I think he'll have that reserve role. If we get injured, something like that, he has to be called upon. He'll definitely be available, and he definitely will have his times to play with his father to kind of have those historic moments as well. And he'll have his times to see, like I said, his progress, like see how much he's grown so far throughout the season. And I think that's good for him going into his rookie year.
Okay, so this is our list. I'm really happy with our list overall. Obviously, I'll ask you guys how we feel about the list overall, but I guess as well as that, what shifts are you expecting once Vando, if Vando would come back? What shifts are you expecting?
I think before that, I want to at least ask a scenario wise, like to build some drama a bit. But like, is there a scenario in which we could see this? Is there a scenario? Just because Jordan Goodwin is on a non-guaranteed contract, he's on sort of a training camp as exhibition deal. But is there a scenario in which Bronny James does play enough to be a role player? Not like Is there a scenario?
I think there is. Obviously, people on the internet are going to say something about it, but I think if you actually watch the games, it'll truly depend on what he does with his first opportunity. I think preseason, and then like Earl said, if he does play the first couple of games before going off to the G League or before taking a break, I think that's really gonna define how involved Bronny's gonna be with the senior team. Um, Obviously, people on the internet are gonna say something about it. They're gonna the nepotism allegations are gonna come out. We're not surprised, but half of these people don't actually watch the Lakers except through tweets. So I think if we're just gonna watch his gameplay, there could be a small possibility. I mean, if Jordan Goodwin is on that non-guaranteed contract, and if Brian James does show out, because if we're thinking about what we said in the summer league analysis, he has defensive potential, and he's still kind of working on how to be aggressive on the offense. He was showing hints and bouts of that in the summer league, but that's something that he definitely needed to work on, was just not being super passive when the team has the ball. So there's a possibility. It's highly dependable on what he does in the preseason and if he does play the first couple of games of the season.
Yeah, I agree with you. I definitely think there's a chance, depending on how he performs. Who knows? Like we talked about this before. Like summer league is summer league. We'll see what happens in preseason. But when the season starts, like it could take one game, one opportunity for him to play great, and maybe his timeline gets bumped up a little bit more than it was like starting the year. So definitely a chance for that, especially with Goodwin not being on a guaranteed contract. They could see it as an opportunity to kind of invest in, well, show early returns and investment they made in Bronny James.
Yeah, for me, like I said, this could be a scenario. I kind of lean towards Jordan Goodwin and JHS probably playing better than Bronny, but that's not a slight of Bronny. That's just um, sort of going by JJ Redick's quotes and looking at what we've already seen on the court. I think Jordan Goodwin and JHS are guys who can outplay Bronny and will likely get more minutes than Bronny. Probably in these couple first preseason games. Now, near the end of the preseason game, we could see Bronny get maybe 10, 12 minutes. But like I said, it'll be dependent on JJ Redick and how he manages everyone's minutes in these couple first games versus Minnesota and etc. And we can go back to Alex's question about how Vando and Christian Wood would be a part of the rotation. And where would Vando and Christian Wood be if they were healthy?
Yeah, Vando and Christian Wood, if they are healthy, I'm bumping up Vando and Christian Wood to first four off the bench, and I'm probably dropping down Jackson Hayes, and then I'll probably drop down Cam Reddish. I think that's probably what I would do if I'm being honest. I think that looks like what it could be going into the season.
I think I do the exact same thing. I mean, I think Vando and Christian Wood, the thing about them is that they're even like, well, more so Vando, debatable on whether they'd be on any starting lineup or not if we end up being rotational or not. I don't know if JJ Redick is gonna have like a more of a bona fide starting lineup, which I'm not mad at considering what happened when we didn't have a bona fide starting lineup and how that went last year. So I wouldn't be mad if that was the case. But I think Vando would definitely be on the first four off the bench, so much to the point where he'd be debatable as to whether he's starter worthy or not for the team.
Yeah.
And then Christian Wood, I don't think he's as debatable, maybe in a few scenarios if we wanted to pair him up with AD. But for the most part, he definitely would be first off the bench over Jackson Hayes, in my opinion. I mean, so I think I totally agree with that, and I would also just like be in agreement on who we replace. In terms of who I think will be replaced, I'm not 100% sure, but in terms of who I would want to replace, I think Jackson Hayes and Cam Reddish would be my picks as well.
I think I've been opening up to this scenario just because JJ Redick and how he's using our big man. But I feel like this is a scenario. I feel like this is a strong possibility. Jackson Hayes or Christian Wood. Like I said, Christian Wood's going to be coming off an injury. Also, we'll have to see how he fits and how he mentally and of course physically prepared. But like I say, if Christian Wood was healthy, I don't know. I feel like DJ wants a screener and wants a lob threat, a part of his game plan. I feel like so. I got Jackson Hayes over Christian Wood, and of course, yeah, Cam Reddish with you guys. Wouldn't be in the role players.
I think that's so valid. I was more thinking that Christian would probably start at role players and then eventually climb up to first four off the bench. But again, it's kind of like what you said. It depends on what JJ Redick envisions with Jackson Hayes, because Hayes does have the upper hand of that. He's healthy enough to be experimented with from the get go. And I think it's just gonna depend. Like if Jackson Hayes stands out as one of the rotation players, I think Christian Wood might stay as a rotation player. As a role player, sorry. But if Jackson Hayes isn't standing out that much, and then Christian Wood has the chance to climb up the ranks, I think that's what's going to make it really interesting. It's so dependable on if Jackson Hayes can really make a name for himself from those first however long Christian Wood is gone. I honestly have no clue, but still.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. I think this is probably the most likely situation. He is coming back from like surgery, so it definitely is going to take him some time to kind of get back into fully healthy shape, even when he does come back for that first game. So yeah, I like this a lot. I think we did a really good job with this tier list. I think this is probably the most probably the best outcome, and obviously we'll have outliers depending on performances and stuff like that. But I think early on, this is a good look at what the Lakers will look like.
I'm gonna add one more thing real quick, and it's gonna be going back to like the guards conversation we were having earlier. Apparently, Jordan Goodwin is gonna miss a week due to hamstring injury. I just saw the practice notes that Daniel Starkin kind of put out. Also, Cam Reddish did miss a couple of practices due to injury as well. I'm gonna find what injury it was, but both Cam Reddish and Jordan Goodwin have missed a little bit due to injury. So I think this is just a minor change, as neither of them were really going to be bona fide starters or anything like that. But I think it does shake things up as in terms of like who will be in the rotation, who will not. So yeah, I just want to know what y'all think about that, because Jordan Goodwin and Cam Reddish both have injury problems right now, but it's like minor.
Yeah, then honestly, I think easy solution for that would probably be in this scenario. Dalton Connect would probably have more of a opportunity early on to take that first spot off the bench. I feel like, especially with those injuries to Vando, Seawood, and then if it's Goodwin and Reddish, I think the easy choice would be to plug in Dalton Connect there, and let him gain experience early on.
So we're thinking based off of those notes, as Alex said from Daniel Starklin, this would be our supposed tier list, our lineup right now, in the looks of it. Our starters, of course, Russell, Austin, Rui, LeBron, AD. First off the bench, Gabe, Max, Dalton Connect, Jackson Hayes, role players, JHS, and Cam. And then reserve, Jordan Goodwin, Bronny, Max Lewis, two-way contracts, of course, and then our injured players.
We did that. Um, we did that. I'm actually pretty happy with this list. Look at us, even us as like fans have a clear vision of what our team is gonna be in the JJ Redick era. That's really interesting.
But yeah, lastly, for this preseason preview, I suppose there'll be a simple question. Who will be the best three players from that preseason game? Like, who will be your top three players who you think will outperform and will be a standout in your eyes?
I got Max Christie, Dalton Connect, and then I'm rounding it off with Bronny James. I'm going my big three. I think they're all going to show out, perform well, because I feel like out of all the three of those guys on this roster, I think they have the most to prove. Max Christie's been overlooked for the last 2 seasons. Dalton's Connect. A lot of people passed up on him, arguably a top 10 pick in this draft. And then Bronny James, obviously we know all the expectation he has with the last name James and people not believing he deserved his opportunity. And I think all three of those guys equally have enough passion to put it into a preseason game, I'll say, and go out there, show out, and fight for a position on this rotation.
Okay, I think the top 3 in the preseason, right? I'll say Max Christie, and that is like my number 1 in my opinion. I just think that this season is his season. And I know that we said that last year, but to be fair, it was messed up because he got DMP'd by Darvin Ham. He is most likely not getting DMP'd this time, which is why I am saying it once again that this year is Max Christie's year. I genuinely believe that so much. And I genuinely believe because of the emphasis on playing around with the bench players that we're assuming in the preseason, Max Christie's number 1 on my list. It's not even that close. I think I'll say Dalton Connect is also gonna have his moments. I think we're gonna see a lot from him as well. And then third, I'm low-key wondering if either Bronny James or even if Jackson Hayes, because I feel like he's gonna play more than Anthony Davis for sure. And Jackson Hayes is gonna be starting, and we're gonna see how that goes. And we're gonna see if Jackson Hayes is truly ready to be our backup center. He doesn't have much of a choice because our roster didn't move in the center position except for Christian Koloko, who's on a two-way. But we'll see if he's really ready for it. So I think Bronny is an option. Even Jackson Hayes is an option too on like who I think will stand out in the preseason. Honorable mention to JHS. Maybe he will actually do well, like everyone is saying, but like not everyone believes it yet. Some people still think that like he does better in training camps than he does in like actual games. But if JHS does well, then JHS does well, and I'll be happy with that.
For my 3, I got number 1, Austin Reeves will be my first guy. I think he has a great game under JJ Redick. I think he'll be working well, and I'll be interesting to see if JJ uses him as like a spot up shooter, if he'll allow Austin to create one-on-one as he did before in the past, or even if he becomes I said like a Steph Curry type, but we've seen from that little video of LeBron James when he did a little fake dribble handoff to I don't know who was the guard. I'd imagine it'd be Austin, but that fake dribble handoff onto a drive towards a pass to Anthony Davis or a simple dunk. So if I imagine if there would be a ton of dribble handoffs, I think Austin Reeves could be a benefactor from a couple of those fake screens such dribble handoffs type of movement from what I've seen so far. So like I said, Austin Reeves number 1. Number 2 is going to be Rui Hachimura. I got high hopes for Rui under JJ Redick. And as we've seen, he's going to be athletic, he's going to be physical, and he's going to be aggressive towards the rim. And then my third guy, as all of us have, Max Christie. Max Christie will be one of my standout players for this first preseason game, and he'll be great. Like I said, he's an opportunity to be a 3-and-D player and show out like he did in the summer league season that he had. When given opportunity, Max Christie could be a 10 to possibly 15-point scorer per game if given the right opportunity and chance by our head coach, JJ Redick.
Honestly, if we are including starters in the conversation, I think Rui would also be one of my picks as well. Like it's kind of what I said as to why I think this season will be Rui season. I think, but I'm gonna make it clear from the very beginning. The top 2 players I'll be looking at this season, well, top 3, AD to see if he finally gets his DPOY that he deserves, and then Rui and Max Christie are gonna be the 3 that I'm gonna be watching this entire season the most. But if we are including starters, I think Rui's a really good pick as well, just because of, as I said, the way that his game is being evolved under JJ Redick, even just in training camp, and the way his game is being diversified, and the way that he's doing a lot more than just standing behind the 3 and like hoping to shoot. Like he's doing a lot more than that now, and that's something I'm really excited to see. There's probably more stuff on the agenda that we can get to, but at some point, I just want to do a quick check-in of what do you guys think the record is as of now? We checked in a couple weeks ago. now that it's media day, training camp, going into the preseason, what do you think our regular season record is going to be?
All right, that's a good question. I'm doing my math right here. You know what? I think our record will be. Oh, I think this year we win. You know what? I'm going super. I won't use the word unrealistic, but I'm going super crazy. I'm gonna go 60 and 22. 60 and 22. I think the only thing that can stop us is injuries. We have team chemistry. We have a way better built system this year. And I think guys are really buying into building a championship culture once again through JJ Redick. So I'm excited. I'm going to say 60 and 22. You guys can mark it down, meme it, whatever y'all got to do. But when I'm right, you can come back and say thank you.
I'm doing the math right now too. 60 is bold. I'm not against it. I'd be so happy if we did get 60. That is very bold though. I won't disagree because we definitely do look a lot better. But I think I'll go a bit lower. Even though 60 is very nice, would love that. I'll say 54 to 28 maybe. I feel pretty confident we'll get into the 50s. Before, I think I said like 51 before because I was like barely. I was like, oh, are we gonna get 50 games? I don't know, but like I feel pretty confident that we can get 50 games now. I'll go to 54 in 28. Obviously, I'd rather go 60, and I'd be really happy if we do. But for now, I think if I'm thinking realistically in my head, I'm gonna go 54-28.
I'm go with 55 and 27. I think that's my prediction. I'm not sure about 60. I mean, that's a lot with this current Lakers roster, but they could likely get above 50 games. I think if coached well enough, and as we've seen from last season with the same roster, 55 seemed like my ideal least prediction.
We gotta ask Jake at some point what his new record is. But I think we all sound a lot more confident after this media day and training camp, which good to know. Good to know. Very good sign. I don't think we would have said the same thing last year or 2 years ago, so this is really good.
Yeah, I agree. I'm really just looking forward to these games tomorrow. Well, this game tomorrow, and just this regular season coming up. We finally are back. It's been a long summer of really nothingness for Lakers fans. Not gonna lie to you, as far as moves, it was said to be a big summer, but it didn't turn out to be that. Well, maybe it's a good thing. Maybe we run it back and things go better this time. Yeah, but all I can say is I'm really excited for this upcoming season and all the fun content we have planned. But yeah, I think we're a lot more optimistic, like you said, about our records. I think 60 is possible. It just depends, man. JJ Redick, I'm gonna know sooner rather than later if we can do it, and if this was just a terrible take. But I think I'm gonna hold myself to that 60 and see what happens.
Yeah, at least for our last prediction for his first preseason game, what will be the final score?
I don't even know how to predict that because I don't even know like who off the pecking order is gonna play or not. That I don't have an answer yet. I'm gonna think, so I'm gonna stay mute again. But still,
I was killing these last year. Okay, here's my final score. I have the Lakers 108, Timberwolves 89. That's my final score. That's my final score.
I think for me, I gotta go 106, 100. Lakers win.
Okay, I'm gonna 108 to 89. You think we're gonna like blow them out the water? I respect that. I'll say I do think the Lakers will win. We'll probably get like 10. I'm just gonna say 107 because that's in the middle, but I think it's gonna be like 100 something. The Wolves are like 99, 107, 99. It's gonna be kind of close. It's gonna be kind of close.
Yeah, these, as Earl mentioned, the hot take segment to end the podcast. Let's start off, Earl.
My hot take is that we will have 3 players to score 20 plus points tomorrow. I'm not going to give specifics today. I don't know. But I will say one of those guys will be Max Christie. But 3 players will score 20 plus points this game.
I guess my hot take. Well, I guess that's like medium take. My hot take, I think, is that I think JJ Redick will have a really successful first season, and I think that he will be with us for a decent amount of time. That's we don't really know yet, but I don't know if I'm being too reactionary, but I genuinely think that JJ Redick is like he's gonna have a really good first season, and I think he's gonna stay with us for some time. He's kind of reminding me of another team that I watch, but I'll get into that later. But that's just my take.
Hot take I got for this one. We're gonna go D'Lo, Austin Reeves, both over 10 plus points in that first game, and we're gonna go Max Christie, 8 plus points, right there, and then we're gonna go one standout guy, which we're not gonna be expected if even minutes. I'm going with Armo Traore. Gonna have a solid, maybe 5 plus points and near 5 plus rebounds. I say he didn't have a double double, but I think we'll have a stand up game. Like I said, he's highly athletic, physical, and a energy guy. And I'm a big fan of energy guys. And if they give an opportunity, I think he could play well versus Minnesota in the first matchup.
Yeah, I like those hot takes. I'll definitely be tracking those hot takes along. I'm locked in. I'm excited for our first game tomorrow.
Yeah, that's all for the podcast. Thank you all for joining. We're on Twitter, YouTube, or on Playback. As always, drop a like, follow our Playback at Quest18Pod, and always drop a follow to our socials on TikTok, YouTube, etc. We'll be dropping some videos from this podcast and some other podcasts. And as always, have a great rest of your day. Peace. Or any foul words.
As always, peace and go Lakers.